Hello, how's your sewing projects coming along? So, all October I was working on the 1890s skirt, and today I'll be showing the making of that skirt. I did have a lot of distractions midway that you'll see later on. I already put together the base pattern and I'm going to shorten the length a little bit. The instructions say that I have to shorten it at the hem. I'm cutting out the excess and taped it to where the new hem would be, so I don't have to draw and cut out the new hem myself in case I take off too much. The skirt is huge and I'm afraid it would be a bit heavy to wear since the outer layer is a medium weight twill plus the lining. I don't know a lot about fabric weight yet, so I'm just following the recommended stuff. I read a few techniques they use to line the skirt, but I'm just going to flatline it since it seems the most straightforward. Usually, bodices were flatlined by heavier fabric than the fashion fabric to give it some body, but with the skirt, I'm doing the opposite since the lawn is just the lining and the weight of the twill might be enough on its own. The flat line, you cut out the fashion fabric and use the pattern to cut out the same panels with the lining fabric. Then you just sew the edges of the lining and the outer fabric together and treat it as one layer throughout construction. I used a lot of pins around the edges to keep the fabric from sliding and getting stretched out. There was a bit of stretching going on with the thinner fabric but stayed flat after I ironed it. Now it's time to connect all the panels. I started by sewing the back and side panels together and pressing the seams open. While I was charging my camera battery, I thought, oh, I could cut out the pieces for a second petticoat and get it done mostly by machine now. So this took an extra few days, but I'll show some of it since the fabric looked pretty and I was experimenting a bit with different techniques. Working on the table was a lot faster and got the finish cutting out in a few hours instead of a day. It's pretty satisfying just sewing in a long continuous line. Let me show you something satisfying. Yeah. Pretty even. I ran out of the flower print fabric and was just going through my stash for something I could use. I defaulted to cotton lawn since it holds its shape well and it would only be for the ruffles. I'm trying out a new seam technique I found on a blog. I've never really seen it in any other books. Essentially, once you cut out the excess fabric from where you gathered it, you can fold this over twice and then use a zigzag stitch so you don't have to add a binding. That means less fabric waste. It's been 18 hours and I'm almost done with the hardest part. Right, it's pretty much just a quick distraction. Now it's time to go back to the skirt. Right, so very quickly, I finished that seam. Leave that open for your opening for the skirt, and this would be opened again for a pocket. There are no instructions on how to make the skirt placket, so I looked for some tutorials online, and Historical Sewing has one with pictures of original garments. I'll leave a link to that page in the description if you do want to check out how it was done. I cut out 2 rectangles for the facing and finished the bottom edge by overcasting. After attaching the facing to the opening, right sides together, I pressed it in half and tacked the pressed line to the seam line on the other side. It's Halloween. New sewing machine. Oh my god. I finally decided it's time. I really got this one for a trial period, but I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. One, it's plastic. You can hear how hollow it is, but this does not have any replacement parts for it. So if anything breaks, I don't know how I'm gonna fix it, or if the place I bought it from would still be able to fix it. You could hear the difference, like that's metal. like some slight ASMR. Of course, the knobs are all plastic, but it feels so much more substantial, so I'm still gonna use it. Maybe not as much. I am gonna miss this sound. It sounds a lot more mechanical, but this one sounds a lot smoother. It even makes stitches a lot easier, but I don't know. I like the motor on this, but I like this a lot more aesthetically. Let's get back to the skirt. So we've run into a problem, which is the waist is too big. When I was preparing the waistband, it was precisely 4 inches too big, so I'm gonna take in about ½ an inch more of seam allowance on each panel. I pinned this up into how much I actually need to take it in. So that means I need to essentially remove 4 of the seams, which means I have to do the facings again. Oh well, I'm being punished for overlocking my seams. I'll get back to it. Let me see. It fits perfectly. So it seems like I will get to use the pinking shears. It's only a temporary solution, and I'll finish the seam allowances with bias tape in the future. Maybe. For the pocket, I took the bag-style pocket pattern in Bertha Banner's Household Sewing Manual. I used a thicker shirting cotton for the lining though. I got really confused with the orientation when sewing it together, because it's all French seams, so the seam allowance ended up inside of the pocket. The skirt facing is sewed on, and a nice step I saw was to top stitch the seam allowance to the facing so that the facing won't show to the outside of the garment. The top part is folded ½ an inch inward and finished with a blind hem because I don't want to whip stitch about 6 yards of the hem in place. I'm so close to finishing it, let's just run it through the machine. The waistband is then attached to the outside part of the skirt and folded to the inside with a ½ inch seam allowance. Then it's whip stitched into place. The pocket is attached by machine after I let out some space on the right hand side. Sewing in the tape was done by hand with a backstitch since it would carry most of the weight of anything put in the pocket. I sewed it to the very bottom part of the waistband so I can make adjustments if I ever need to or the tape stretches out. Hooks and eyes are sewed on the facing and the waistband. I love how it turned out, and you can kind of see that hourglass silhouette already. But of course, it would be better with the corset, which is the next project. I know I should have done it before all of this, but I wanted to get some practice with the machine, pattern alterations, and just sewing on a straight stitch before something as challenging. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your own sewing adventures. Here are some of the pieces that are part of the entire outfit if you want to watch those. Or in a completely different vein, playing around with builds in The Sims. If you like the video, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. It looks like one of those dinosaurs that go Alright, bye.